The airport lounge glowed with the soft, warm lights that made everything look gentler than it really was. Outside the tall windows, airplanes glided like quiet giants through the thick evening haze, and every few minutes, the muffled announcement of a delayed flight echoed across the room. People were scattered in little pockets, some sleeping, some scrolling, some staring at nothing. At one end of the lounge, Armin Hale dropped into a leather seat, the kind of seat most people found relaxing but he found frustratingly still. He wasn't built for stillness, not when his company was on the edge of its biggest launch, not when his schedule was carved down to the minute, not when the world expected him to be invincible. A 32-hour work streak had carved faint shadows under his eyes, and for once, he didn't try to hide them. He leaned back, exhaling through his nose, running a thumb along the bridge of his nose, a habit from years of stress. His assistant had begged him to cancel this trip, but he wasn't the kind who broke promises. Not to investors. Not to his team. Not even to his loneliness. Just as he closed his eyes, he heard the soft rustle of fabric, the kind that suggested someone unsure of approaching. It was a fragile sound, barely louder than a breath. He opened his eyes, and froze. Standing a few feet away was a girl. 16, maybe 17. Slim, pale from exhaustion, her hair tied loosely behind her head as if she hadn't had the energy to fix it properly. But what struck him wasn't the tiredness in her face. It was that she stood on only one leg. Her right pant leg was neatly folded and pinned up, and she leaned heavily against a single metal crutch. The rubber tip trembled slightly on the polished floor as if her remaining strength was hanging by a thread. A faded hospital bracelet still clung to her wrist, the ink almost washed off. Her backpack looked too heavy for someone her size, yet she supported it without complaint. She cleared her throat softly, tentatively. "Can I sit here, just for a minute?" she whispered. Her voice wasn't asking for permission as much as asking for space to breathe. It held a mixture of politeness and desperation, the kind spoken by someone used to apologizing for needing anything at all. Armin straightened immediately. "Of course," he said, more gently than he'd spoken in months. The girl nodded once, a tiny motion that carried relief, and then carefully lowered herself onto the seat beside him. She moved with practiced caution, lifting her crutch away, balancing, adjusting, making sure she didn't fall. It was a slow process, and he watched every second of it with a strange tightness in his chest. When she finally settled, she exhaled as though she'd just completed a marathon. Her fingers, thin and cold-looking, clutched the strap of her backpack. She kept pulling the hem of her oversized hoodie down, tugging it over where her missing limb would have been, as if trying to hide it even though it was already hidden. Armin didn't speak at first. He sensed something fragile in the moment, something that would shatter if he rushed it. The lounge wasn't loud, but the quiet that formed around them felt deliberate, like the world had paused to let this moment happen. After a while, he said softly, "You're shaking." She laughed lightly, but the sound broke halfway through. "I just needed a break. My crutch gets slippery when I'm tired." "It's been a long day?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. "It's been a long month," she replied, offering a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "The kind where you keep telling yourself you'll rest tomorrow, but tomorrow keeps running away." He nodded. In a strange way, he understood that feeling more than she could have guessed. She brushed her fingertips across the airport bracelet, as if debating whether to explain it, but she didn't. Instead, she looked down at her sneakers, her shoulders tightening as though she feared saying too much. Armin didn't push. For a man who built empires by asking tough questions, he suddenly found himself wanting to give this girl the luxury of silence. But then she turned her head, just slightly, and he caught her eyes, soft brown, deeper than the exhaustion she carried. In that one glance, he saw strength, the kind that wasn't loud or dramatic, the kind built from quiet battles nobody knew she fought. Something inside him stirred, slow and unfamiliar. Her cheeks warmed under his gaze, and she looked down quickly. I'm sorry," she murmured. "I know I look strange. People stare sometimes. I'm kind of used to it." "You don't look strange," he said. The words came out before he had time to filter them. "You're beautiful." She stared at him, stunned, eyes wide, breath caught midair. Not flattered. Not flirty. Just confused. As if beauty was something she'd never been assigned before, something people had forgotten she was allowed to be. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was powerful. Like the moment before a snowflake touches the ground. "No one says things like that to girls like me," she whispered, voice thin, almost breakable. "Then people are blind," he replied. Her lips parted, and for the first time since she'd walked in, something bright flickered across her face. a tiny, trembling smile. And with it came a soft laugh, real, unfiltered, nothing like the brittle one she'd used earlier. It was a sound that felt like winter sun, gentle, unexpected, warming in a way you didn't see coming. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're different," she said quietly. "Most people see me and just look away." "I didn't," he replied. "I noticed," she whispered. For a few seconds, they didn't speak. They simply breathed in the same slow, grounding air. The airport, with all its noise and rushing footsteps and endless delays, faded around them. It felt almost unreal, two strangers sitting side by side, anchored by something neither of them could name yet. The more he sat with her, the more Armin felt an unusual calm settling over him. Not the kind that came from rest, but the kind that came from presence. From being exactly where he needed to be without knowing why. She lifted her backpack slightly, adjusting it on her lap, and winced briefly. He noticed, but she shook her head as if silently saying, "I can manage." He didn't insist. But he didn't look away either. He had spent his life traveling in private jets, sitting in VIP lounges, being treated as a man whose time was more valuable than anyone else's. Yet here he was, listening to the breath of a tired girl who had asked for nothing but a minute. And for the first time in years, a minute felt like the beginning of something. Something neither of them understood yet, but something neither of them wanted to walk away from. She shifted her backpack closer, the weight of it leaning against her side, and though her expression remained composed, Armin caught the tiny wince she tried to hide. He didn't comment. Something told him she wasn't used to people noticing the little things. Or maybe she wasn't used to people caring when they did. The overhead speaker announced another delayed flight, but neither of them reacted. They were seated close enough now that he could hear her breathing, soft, steady, yet faintly uneven from exhaustion. She glanced at him out of the corner of her eye, perhaps surprised that he hadn't looked away, perhaps unsure what to do with a stranger who treated her like she wasn't fragile. "Where are you heading?" he asked gently. She let her fingers trace the edge of her hoodie sleeve before responding. "Somewhere quieter," she murmured. "Somewhere that doesn't smell like disinfectant or remind me of machines beeping." Her answer wasn't detailed, but her tone carried enough truth. Not running away, just reaching for something better. Then she shook her head, embarrassed. "Sorry, that must sound dramatic." "It doesn't," he said. "It sounds honest." Her eyes flickered with surprise again, as though she wasn't used to anyone taking her words at face value. The lounge around them had faded into a soft background hum. Families gathering their things, airport staff pushing carts, screens flashing estimated departure times. But in the small bubble where they sat, everything felt oddly still. "Actually," she began, her voice lowering, "I came here because someone told me airports help you think clearly." He tilted his head. "Do they?" She shrugged. "I don't know. But I thought, maybe if I sit somewhere people are going everywhere, I'd feel less stuck." Armin found himself leaning in, not physically, but with attention, quiet, undivided. "What are you trying to decide?" She hesitated, studying her hands. Her fingers were trembling slightly, though not from cold. From weight. From the heaviness of the question she carried with her. "Whether I keep trying to build something new," she said softly, "or whether I let other people make all my choices again." He didn't interrupt. She wasn't complaining. She wasn't sad. She was simply speaking, letting a truth float between them like a fragile soap bubble that she feared would burst if she over-explained. She tapped one shoe gently on the floor, as if grounding herself. "People think losing a leg is the only hard part," she continued. "But the hardest part is convincing everyone you're still capable of choosing your own life." He stayed quiet, not because he lacked words, but because he sensed a need for space to speak without judgment. Then she lifted her head, her eyes meeting his with unexpected steadiness. "I'm tired of rooms where I need to ask permission just to try." Armin felt something shift inside him. Not pity, never pity. It was something more profound. Admiration, maybe. Respect for someone who looked delicate but carried strength that didn't announce itself. "You didn't ask permission to come here," he said softly. She blinked, and a small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "I guess I didn't." "That tells me something," he added. "It tells me you're already choosing." She breathed out, long and slow, as though his words had loosened something inside her. "Maybe you're right," she whispered. For a moment, their eyes held, a quiet connection, warm and steady, like the kind built between people who meet at exactly the right moment. Her flight number flashed on the screen then, delayed for another hour. She glanced up, then back at him. Well, looks like I have more time to think. Or more time to sit, he offered. You said you just needed a minute. You can take more than that. She laughed, a soft, airy sound. Careful. I might end up taking a whole hour. I don't mind, he said. And he meant it, completely. Her gaze softened, as though she felt the sincerity behind his tone. She leaned back in her seat, letting the tension in her shoulders settle. Her crutch rested against the armrest beside her, and she relaxed her grip on her backpack. After a few quiet seconds, she spoke again. You know, I wasn't planning to talk to anyone today. I wasn't planning to either. Really? You look like someone who always has people around. I do, he admitted. But that's not the same as wanting to talk. She nodded slowly. I get that. The way she said it, with quiet understanding, felt more comforting than he expected. He watched her eyes drift toward the windows, following the movement of planes rolling toward the runway. Do you like flying? He asked. I used to, she said. But now, I think I like what flying means more than the plane part. Going somewhere new. Being someone new. You don't need a plane for that. Her head turned slightly toward him. What do you mean? You can be someone new anytime you want, he said. You already are. You've been changing with every decision you've made today. She looked down at her hands again, but not to hide. To think. That's a nice way to see things, she murmured. I wish more people talk like that. He smiled faintly. Maybe they would, if they took a moment to really look. Look at what? She asked. At the person in front of them. Her breath caught, not dramatically, but subtly, the way someone reacts when suddenly seen in a way they didn't expect. She shifted slightly, turning more toward him. What do you see when you look at me? She asked, the question pure curiosity, not fishing for affirmation, not seeking praise. Just wanting to understand how someone like him interpreted someone like her. He considered his answer carefully, then said, I see someone brave enough to sit alone in an airport with a backpack heavier than she wants to admit. She smiled. I see someone who chose her own direction, even if she hasn't fully figured out what it is yet. Her eyes softened. And I see someone who doesn't need permission, he added. She let out a soft breath, almost a sigh, but a peaceful one. Like she'd been carrying words she didn't know she needed to hear. Thank you, she whispered. Most people talk to me like I need to be protected. But you talk to me like I'm capable. You are capable, he said. More than you think. She didn't look away. For several long seconds, they simply held each other's gaze, and the world around them dimmed. There were no dramatic emotions, just a warm thread of connection pulling gently between them. Then she spoke again, this time shyly. Would it be weird if I stayed here a little longer? No, Armin said, his voice softer than he intended. Stay as long as you want. Her shoulders relaxed completely, as though the permission, though she didn't need it, felt like a cushion beneath her. I'm glad I came to this seat, she murmured. I didn't expect any of this. He didn't ask what this meant. He understood without needing her to explain. Neither did I, he said. Outside, a plane lifted off the runway, rising into the quiet sky. Inside, neither of them moved. Neither of them rushed. Neither of them checked the time. And somewhere between the glow of the lounge lights and the slow drifting of conversations around them, a new, unspoken chapter began forming. Not loud, not dramatic, but deeply rooted in the simplest moment. A tired girl resting for a minute. And a man who found himself wishing her minute would last just a little longer.